Hi, I'm John Armato with another Easy Jazz Spotlight for Easy Jazz FM. And today I'm sitting down with Grammy-nominated contemporary jazz vocalist and singer-songwriter Marilyn Scott. Marilyn has collaborated with legendary artists such as George Duke, Bob James, Brenda Russell, and Patrice Rushen. She's a native of Southern California, but early on she made her way further north, where she began performing in local clubs and fronted soul jazz bands around the San Francisco Bay Area. Among the many friends she made, Tower of Power. They gave her an opportunity to do backing vocals with the Oakland-based band in the studio, and those recording sessions led her back to Los Angeles as a studio session singer, where she performed with Spyro Gyra, the Yellow Jackets, Hiroshima, Bobby Caldwell, and others. Scott's first recording in 1977 as a solo artist was a single, a version of Brian Wilson's God Only Knows, and that led to her first album, Dreams of Tomorrow. Now, with a dozen albums behind her, she's in her fifth decade of releasing music, and her newest release is called The Landscape. It defies easy categorization. That's a good thing for the artist and a tough thing for a guy like me trying to help people new to Marilyn get a feel for the project. For me, the reverb and the Rhodes keyboard sounds and loose and energetic rhythm section rapidly brought to mind Light as a Feather and Flora Purim. But then I thought, no, her ability to tell a story about simply beautiful things makes me think of Michael Franks. But that bent towards social commentary, that's more like Joni Mitchell. The good news for you is once you've listened to her music, and we will, you will simply come to know that sound as Marilyn Scott. So thanks for joining me today, Marilyn. Welcome to the interview.
It's great, John, to be here. Thank you for bringing this up and so we can discuss some stuff that is all about what I do.
Well, I love it. It's fun. We were just commenting before we started rolling here about how we both, as musicians, it's a kick for us to get to talk about what we do as well as to get out there and play and perform. So glad we've got that chance. And I think the place I'd like to start, I alluded to in my introduction, this range of influences and diversity of styles that you clearly embrace fascinates me. And I went back in your catalog. I checked out Take Me With You, which I think was 1995 release of yours. And I thought, well, this had to have been really at home on the smooth jazz scene. But then I listened to Every Time We Say Goodbye, which is a release of yours from 2008.
Right.
All these beautiful standards handled so nicely. And now The Landscape, which is kind of a different vibe. And I'd love to hear how you've managed to cover so much ground and what led you to that flexibility.
Well, I've always, been, I came from a background of listening to radio that played a lot of different types of music. Up in the Bay Area of San Francisco, there was some great stations that played all kinds of music. And then we were in bands that would play, 4 or 5 sets a night of doing pop music, And so, I was around a lot, and it was always R&B and jazz and blues for me. And I was around a lot of people that played that kind of music, Robin Ford and Tower Power and George Duke, people that were up there in the Bay Area, and Russell Ferrante, for that matter.
Nice.
One of the originators of the Yellow Jackets. So, but I always wanted to be a jazz singer, but I always thought that, you have to really walk the walk for a while. You have to earn it. It's not like being in a band like Ella was or Sarah, but they were in these beautiful bands orchestras, by the way, with arrangements and things and sweetening that was just incredible. Well, we don't have that. So, you have to come from another way. And so, eventually, I became a writer where I was writing for Chapel Music for a while. I started writing with Russell Ferrante for a long time. I have been writing with Russell Ferrante since maybe 79.
Oh, really?
And, it's just been a long, long road of trying to figure out things. When I was coming up in the 80s and the early 90s, they always said, if you do this kind of music, you can write your ticket of where you want to go, what you want to do, and especially vocalists, right? So, I was always led that way, and you'll be able to do more. So I think I started out kind of on the wrong foot in a way. I mean, I enjoy it and I don't regret it, but it's just I could see how I got from A to Z. But all along the way, I've met some incredible people. And you mentioned Take Me With You. Yeah, that was I went to Warner's, and they really were great with me and gave me some great opportunities. And I got to work with Dori Kaimi and Bill Sample, and I worked with Terry Lynn and Patrice, and the list goes on. And that kind of always, with the shape of what I wrote, was about, not to be too preachy or too commentary, but on the other hand, trying to tell a story. You can tell a story about love, and we do. And I talk about what we all go through, but really, there's some things about love that is about us in society, and there's been. You mentioned Joni. Stevie Wonder is another one that they give it to you in a way that is so incredibly musical that that's, to me, that's deep writing and good writing for me. And so I've always tried to do that. But in the middle, I'll do standards, and then I'll do like Innocent of Nothing, which is sort of out there. And then I'll go back and do Nightcap with George. And then I'll go back and do, some crazy stuff. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot of people that I want to come back to and talk about in a second, but I'm thinking about all that range you're talking about, both in performance and in writing. But if you're doing 5 sets a night on a long gig, if you're working frequently, if you're jumping from blues to jazz and pop and live to studio, that's hard on your instrument. And not everyone is able to do that and sound good over the long haul. Were you trained classically, academically? How was it you were able to cultivate your voice to be able to do all of that?
My mother, she sang operatic and played classical music, but she died when I was like 12. So,
oh, wow.
I've been around a lot of singers that we all trade what to do and how to do it. And yeah, I got hoarse a lot. And I learned, and I've been with some great arrangers and things like that told me, how to breathe better, how to tell a story by where you put your breath to make it a conversation. And I've just been lucky with a lot of people that are singers, and we've talked about it. And so that's my upbringing.
Yeah. Well, you anticipated one of the things I wanted to ask you about with this incredible range of A-list artists and producers and players that you've been working with. I'm curious what recollections you have over different projects, over different years, over different settings. What sticks out to you as lessons learned or just great moments on the bandstand or in the studio?
I've been with a lot of people, and I have to say, being friends with Etta James really was such a great influence. And
how did you come to know Etta?
And well, I went to a session of hers. A friend of mine was working for the label that she was on and said, Etta's at the studio, Cherokee, and you want to go? And I said, oh, yeah. And so I got to meet her, and they were doing background vocals. And I was a background singer for a lot of background vocals for a lot of artists for many years. So I knew a lot of the people, and I met her. And so when she played again, then I'd go and go backstage and hang out and talk to her. And then she asked if I wanted to open for her a couple of times when we were playing in Venice. And so I did that a few times. I had a horn band that was a blues band. We did all kinds of blues songs. And her always her advice to me was, now go on out there and bite a hole in it. She had
And what was the line? And do what?
She always had these great expressions, and one of them was, get out there now and go bite a hole in it. Right?
What a great phrase. I love it.
No, and she introduced me to Betty Carter, because I played Telluride Jazz Festival and she was there, and I went over to see her, and I said, Betty Carter's about to go on, and I said, I'm going to go over there. You want to come? And she goes, sure. Yeah, let's go. She said, I know Betty. So we walk over there. This is another great story. It's crazy. And we walk over there, and Betty's doing the set, and Betty finishes the set. So the backstage where the artists are is right up behind the stage. So we walk over there, and she walks in the door, and Betty goes, Anna, girl, and Anna says, what are you doing? And they get in there and they start hugging and talking. And Betty goes, who's this person behind you? She goes, oh, that's Marilyn Scott. She's taken all my licks. Now she wants yours. I was just like, nice to meet you. Slowly walked out the door. It's just, wow. But gosh, such great energy.
Yeah.
I mean, those things.
Does anything stand out as having been life-changing? Maybe is a little bit of extreme, but pivotal. Or are there moments in those experiences, these incredible experiences you're describing, where you fundamentally changed course or approached music differently as a result, or something clicked in you as a result of these interactions?
Well, if it didn't, you wouldn't be writing about the things you write about. There are things that always are going to happen in your life that are going to knock you down, or you're going to fall in love, or something that is going to propel you to write something that's deep and from the heart. And usually when you do that, it's going to be relatable to everybody around you. You're writing about a deep experience.
It strikes me that the folks you're referring to so far, Etta James, Betty Carter, those sorts of folks, when you listen to them, you can almost palpably feel their pain. I mean, their work was so authentic. And now in your own writing, let's bring it up to date with The Landscape. One of the tunes that really caught my ear is Irreplaceable. And it's got the simple, profound line and message: we're responsible for the irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. And there's that great video you did with it that juxtaposes all this beauty and decay in a very sort of compelling yet distressing way. And I think you did that in the Palm Springs desert, right?
I did. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's easier for me to sort of imagine you actually going out for a walk one day or whatever, and simply being inspired directly by the experience to write it. I have no idea what prompted that song, but tell us where that came from. You're talking about you can't live these moments without it coming through in your writing. What prompted Irreplaceable? Well,
the project, The Landscape, is all the songs are about finding peace in nature, and that we have to take care of it in order to have that one thing that's free and accessible to us that can help us with our lives. You can't buy it. It's there, and we have to take care of it. We're responsible. We're supposed to be the smartest species, so we're the host now, and we're the ones to oversee that it's maintained and in beautiful, pristine shape as it is. And so that was one of the messages I wanted to talk about, was that we're responsible for the irreplaceable. Yeah, and
it's a beautiful line.
So everything is precious. Mm-hmm. We have to see that. That has to become paramount in our lives, just as it would be the upbringing of our children. We have to take that serious and very special, and we're losing it. So the project's about that. And the Landscape song is about people who are discouraged and don't know what to do in their lives, but the one place that they could get solace is in nature.
Well, let's use that as a good segue. We're going to drop in the title cut from the album here so everybody can listen to it. So let's check out the title cut and then talk a little bit about it. Here is Marilyn Scott with the tune The Landscape from her new album by the same name.
They laid off most of the town, and she was sad and down. She held out her hand to catch the snowflake. She said it freed her soul and began to walk the trail alone, then disappeared into the landscape. He said fishing opened his mind. When he's in danger, there's no divide. No resentment of others with disdain. A lost opportunity he'll never regain. And he smiled as if he let go and redeemed in nature what life had stolen. The landscape is more than trees and views. It's what we say and what we do. It's what we are today. Never forsaking this frontier, so this beautiful view won't disappear. Mountain tops that snare the clouds, peacefulness in our backyards. This is what we find in the landscape. Let this wilderness be your church. This heaven holds your rebirth when we disappear into the landscape. And he were a duet, and he rode the surf till the end of sunset, and this filled his soul for what lie ahead, for the ocean held together his life by a thread. The landscape is more than trees and views. Oh, it's what we say and what we do. It's what we are today. Navigating through this frontier, so this beautiful view won't disappear. All the dreams that die and live in the soul. Every planet row has been for tomorrow. So precious are the things that lives and breathes. For everything we can and cannot see, we find within the landscape. We find within the landscape. We find within the landscape. Find me in the landscape. We find within the landscape. We find within the landscape. We find within the landscape. Find me in the landscape.
That was The Landscape by Marilyn Scott from the album by the same name. We were talking about this passion you have for this message. I like your line, we are the host. And this is the one thing that's genuinely free to us, our ability to interact with nature. Is it fair to say that the landscape has sort of always been your personal refuge? Have you always felt this connection to nature?
Well, I've written a lot of things about our lives. With Russell Ferrante, I wrote, Love Understands, which is about homeless people. We wrote No Room for Hate, which is about, not accepting hate in your home, not letting it in. If you're going to go there, you have that. Please don't bring it to where I live.
Right.
So, these messages, these things are a landscape, and we have to be aware of it, and what are we going to do about it? So yeah, I do it, but I try to not be. This album is probably the one that talks about it all the way through, and before I've dotted it in with some standards or maybe somebody else's tune or
Right.
something like that, but I haven't really done it like this way this time. Maybe COVID made me do it because we were all kind of sequestered at home, and it brought in a different way of looking at things. We were all looking at life a little differently,
And it gave us all a lot of time to think.
Oh yeah.
Now less people think that the album is a downer. I think there's these incredibly uplifting messages on the album as well. The flip side of the emotion of the landscape for me is the tune Sun, which also from the new album, and where Irreplaceable seems sort of rooted in anxiety and distress. Sun seems to be this pure appreciation, just this celebration of simply feeling good in the world. And I'm curious, what was going through your mind as you were sort of juxtaposing these sort of dark and stressful realizations with these appreciations, as I call them.
Sure. And the Sun is about a place in Brazil called Bucios that I was there with some friends, and Renato Neto, who is a great keyboardist and lives in Sao Paulo. And, I just was amazed at people from everywhere, just all together. Everybody was fantastic. There was no classes, the rich and the poor type deal. Everybody was together. Music was blaring with Jovan. They would have these little tables that they sat in the ocean, and they had drinks delivered and beer and these little things. And people were dancing, and it was just like that all day. And at night, it was walking around the streets, and you hear music. It was truly like a little paradise.
Oh, sounds like it. That's amazing. Well, we've been talking about the vibe and the messages, but I want to get to the musical side of this a little bit too. Back on the landscape, the tune. There's a really swinging instrumental interlude in there that I just love. Piano solo, rhythm section. And I found myself thinking, not only is your voice charming, but man, she hires great sidemen too. I was just wow, the personnel was, I'd love to hear about who's on the album and your take on their playing.
For real. Some of the same guys, I cannot seem to do a project without Michael Landau and Jimmy Haslip and Russell Ferrante and Gary Novak. We had Vinnie Colaiuta play. We had
wonderful.
Jimmy Branley played. Steve Kahn played guitar on The Sun.
Just your everyday up and comers, right?
It was just, it's great. When you ask, you don't know you don't know. They might say no. So, you got to ask. I think It's a great tune for these people. I think it's a great tune for these people to be involved. And most of this is, the people who wrote with me on it were playing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's an incredible lineup, and you can hear the virtuosity.
Yes, Scott Kinsey, he wrote a lot and played keyboards, and he took out some solos that you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even going back in your catalog a little bit, when I was listening to the title track of Every Time We Say Goodbye, I'm curious, who was the tenor player on that? You're called the tenor sax player on that? Because there's a moment.
On Every Time We Say Goodbye is Joe Ken Peplowski.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Of course. I mean, there is something that you don't hear much of these days, which is, in my mind anyway, this just sort of beautiful attentiveness to individual tones and sounds. At the start of his solo, there's like about 6 bars where he just holds that one note.
I know. And
lets the harmony shift underneath him. And he's just got this gorgeous phrase around a single note. And again, it was a moment where I'm like, the personnel and the musicality coming from the personnel is really incredible. You've always been very choiceful in your sidemen, I take it.
Well, that was a great record. That was I did that in New York, and I hadn't spent any time in New York. So that was, some great, a great moment.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the musicality that you're surrounding yourself with. I should pause and mention to everybody listening that the new album and a lot of other great music from Marilyn is available directly from her at marilynscott.com, and you can also find it on Amazon and iTunes and pretty much everywhere else you buy, download, or stream your music. And before we got on the show yesterday, Marilyn and I were chatting a little bit, and it's not easy to make a living in music these days. So I want to encourage people to buy the real deal. Yes, you can stream it, but it can take as many as 1,000 streams for a musician to earn $1, literally. So if you like what you hear and you want this music to thrive, consider buying the CD or digital download, and you'll be doing all of us a favor. So are all of the tunes on the Landscape, Marilyn, originals? Is this all you're writing?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And it sounds like this is the first album that is all originals. Is that right? You've had originals peppered in before, but this is your first complete project like this?
Complete, yeah. Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like your writing goes pretty far back. Do you recall the first time you tried to put lyrics on a page?
Well, the first thing that I ever did was I wrote a song called "The Light" with Russell Ferrante. Yeah.
Oh, that's a pretty good first collaborator. That's amazing.
Yeah, before I think I was too tired from playing in bands and stuff. But I always wanted to write, but I hadn't done it yet. I hadn't struck it yet. Yeah.
Were as a kid, were you prone to jot down, poems, or did you keep journals? Was that desire to sort of always bring the story out of you and onto the page? Was that a part of you early on?
I don't know if it's true or not, but my grandmother was a very, very poetic person, and she wrote a lot of poetry, and I was always loving that, and she would talk about it, and so I could say that maybe I caught some of that from her.
It's interesting when you hear stories of how tunes are born and that sort of thing. Some people are extremely prolific. They can get 2 or 3 wonderful compositions out in a day or two. Others labor over it over a long time. Tell me a little bit about your creative process. What does it take for you to get a song on paper?
Well, back in the 80s, I wrote for Chappell, and it was more of a pop type thing, and it was excruciating. It was terrible. And it was, hard to be in that way where you have to come up with something, even, whatever. And
it was excruciating because it was creativity on demand. You had a deadline.
Right. It was trite. It was stupid. It was, and I'm sure it was me that just couldn't get a grip on it. Maybe if I'd had that opportunity in the 90s, I would have been much better at it,
Yeah.
But it came at a time where I didn't do very well. I traveled around and wrote with writers in Nashville and New York and that, but nothing ever really came of it too much. But I think writing to me is so, well, recording is incredible. To make a piece come to life, it doesn't matter if it's written by somebody else or a standard or your own, to make that music come to life in a way that you feel it, and approach it differently, I think is really exciting. And when I did Standard Blue, that was trying to take some really incredible tunes and then standard tunes and then just sort of pull the blues out of them, and approach it that way. I thought that was a cool idea.
I've got to interject because there's a great quote on your website from George Duke. He said, and I think I'm paraphrasing here, Marilyn can sing that jazz thing, but at the same time, she's got the blues. Are you intentional about bringing the blues into your music, or is that just what's going to happen when you open your mouth?
I think that I've just been raised around a lot of it, and I just love it, and I feel it. Black music has taught me more about myself than anybody in my family or anyone could ever teach me, and I resonate with that, and I have such appreciation for it. I just like to do it. It just comes that way, and that's my approach.
Yeah. Who do you like to listen to these days? Are there people that when you want to turn other musicians on to, somebody hip, because everyone's always like, hey, have you checked out so-and-so? You got to hear this. Who's on your list for that?
I don't have anybody that's new and hip, I think. Let's just say that in this week, I've listened to Brad Mehldau and Chris Thile. That project, which is an incredible project.
Okay.
The Baylor project, the new the live recording, I think is just amazing. I think that and the Yellow Jacks album that they did with the big band, I think that's really good too.
Yeah.
And I like Warren Zevon, and I like. There's just so many. I do, and I think. Not to plug anybody, but Sirius Radio, the Real Jazz, really gives me a lot of what I like to hear, and especially on Fridays, on Fusion Friday. So tune into that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, are you one of those kinds of people who surround yourself, or are you just swimming in music all day, every day, or do you need a little bit of quiet so that your music can occupy that space?
I do like a lot of music, and I do play a lot. I play a lot of instrumental music. I can get off on just listening to Lyle Mays all day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's some wonderful things. But of course, being silent is really great too. When you're in your car and you're not going to get there for an hour. Sometimes turning off the radio is a good thing.
I have found that when I'm on my way home from a gig, the last thing I want to do is turn the radio on. It's like I've had,
you want to, and you want to live that for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What do you play?
I'm a drummer. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I just put out an album last year called The Drummer Loves Ballads. That's kind of my world at the moment.
I got to get that, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure you do. You said something earlier that reminded me of something in session working on my project. You talked about, wanting to do things differently as you were working on the standards and the album and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And John Cushan, who's drummer and road manager and husband of Alita Adams, is a good friend of mine.
Oh,
and agreed to, he agreed
in years, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh, you know John. That's wonderful. Yeah, he's a fan of yours. We were chatting about you recently, and he produced my album. And as we were going through the tune selection process, we were talking about how I wanted to approach each thing. And his mantra was, if you're going to do it like it's been done before, what's the point? Right. What is it we're going to bring to it? And I feel that, and I hear that in your music consistently across your catalog. Each thing reflects a new take as I hear it.
Yeah. And I put it in a different key. Don't put all the music in the same key,
Yeah.
Move around a little bit, try something different,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're rapidly running out of time, but I just wanted to tell you how much I've been enjoying your music and how much I appreciate the chance to chat with you. As you shared memories with us from some past experiences and people you've been interacting with, I think my last question would be, what memories do you still want to make? What do you dream about? What projects might be percolating? I know we want people to go out and buy The Landscape, so it may be premature to talk about what's next, but when you look down the road, what new memories await you?
You know, it's always been a struggle to get, agents, and so we could play this music out, and so much of it has, to me, been left behind because I don't have the opportunity. And I would want that. I would want to be able to grab the guys that played some of this music and affordably go out and play it. And that's what I would like to do.
It's tough. I mean, I definitely see that with my peers and other folks that I talk to, and sort of the more rarefied world that you and others operate in. Just getting booked and being able to make it an affordable thing is incredibly challenging. I'm not sure how much fans of jazz understand how little money there is in making jazz.
It's impossible. You can't go anywhere without you playing in town, and so it limits who hears your music and the experience of seeing someone that you do like in a live setting.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well,
it's totally different.
And we'll make sure we don't devolve into a rant, because we could spend another 40 minutes on that. But everybody, I hope you check out Marilyn Scott. Go to marilynscott.com. The new album is called The Landscape, available on her website and on Amazon and everywhere else you buy your music. And I do hope you'll check it out. Marilyn, thank you for your time. It's been a delight to get to know you. Yeah.
I really appreciate the time today, and I can't wait to hear your music.
Oh, you're very kind. We'll make sure that you do.
You got it. Okay.
Until then, we'll be listening to yours. Thank you, Marilyn. We'll talk soon.
Peace for everybody.
Bye-bye.